The Star Sport podcast is brought to you by Access Credit Union. Access Credit Union, funding dreams for over 50 years.
Close your eyes and pull like a dog.
And a new Irish record for Phil Healy, 22.99.
Christy Cooney hands over the Sam Maguire Cup to Graham Canty, Cork All-Ireland champions for the 7th time ever.
Hello and welcome once again to another episode of the Star Sport podcast. I'm your host Matthew Hurley and I'm joined today by Star Sport editor Kieran McCarthy. The Star Sport podcast is brought to you in association with our friends at Access Credit Union. Access Credit Union, where your bank really does matter. Choose credit union, choose local, choose community. Now later on the show we will be joined by Tom Savage from Three Red Kings to discuss Jack Crowley in depth after the Bandon Rugby Club graduate started both Ireland games against New Zealand and Argentina recently. However, the real question in the last few weeks has been whether Jack is at risk of losing his starting spot in the Ireland team. But first, we will discuss some recent stories that are taking the headlines in West Cork this week, and I suppose not much of GA is going on around here, but one thing that is a local All-Star winner. Saoirse McCarthy won another All-Star award in the All-Star camogie team this year. However, she did miss out on the Player of the Year after being nominated. Laura Hayes got that nomination as the Player of the Year. But it's great all the same for Saoirse to get an All-Star, yet another All-Star to her collection, her third now.
Yeah, 100%. Matthew, that's her third All-Star in a row. So rubber stamp Saoirse as one of the top camogie players in the country right now. And like you said, she was running for the top award, the Senior Player of the Year. That actually went to her good friend, Laura Hayes, her Cork teammate. But Saoirse has been in the shortlist for that for the last 2 years in a row as well. So it shows that she's right up there. Like, she's one of the best in the business right now. Like, to put three All-Stars back to back, like, you have to be pretty good to do that, and she's been a kind of a mainstay of this Cork team in the last couple of years, and a big reason why Cork have won back to back Duffy Cups. So it was another good night for Saoirse McCarthy, another All-Star in our back pocket, and a great night for the Cork camogie team. Absolutely cleaned up, 8 All-Stars. Laura Hayes took Player of the Year, Germany took Manager of the Year. So on and off the pitch, this Cork team just dominates, Matthew.
Yeah, it's an exceptional achievement, all right, and they were very, very consistent throughout the whole season. Just before we get on to Cork a small bit, like, Saoirse herself, like, getting nominated for Player of the Year this year, do you think in future years there's a possibility there that she actually wins the full award? Because she's rubber stamped, as you said, her dominance really on the sport of camogie, and she's one of the most marketable camogie players at this present moment in time. So is there a possibility that she does win the top prize in the next few seasons?
You would think so. If she can keep producing the performance levels that she has over the last couple of years, like, it's only a matter of time, I would think, that she'd land the big one. I know obviously players aren't in it for that. They want to win the medals with the county. They want Cork to be dominant and win the Duffy Cup again. And it's just I think it's an added bonus for a player in your season with an All-Star, or in Laura Hayes' case this year with the Player of the Year award. But Saoirse has been thereabouts, like I said, for the last couple of years. And if she keeps doing what she's doing and keeps producing the level of consistent performances that she is now season after season, she'll be back in the conversation again next year. But I suppose it's all dependent on how this Cork team will perform in 2025. The big target, the big goal for Saoirse and her teammates will be the 3 in a row, to keep Cork on top of the perch. But you just have to see how that works out. So it's going to be a big year for the Cork camogie team next year.
And the other All-Star winners for the Cork team, there were 7 other players, obviously. Amy Lee from the Piershig, Pamela Mackey from Douglas, Laura Hayes, as mentioned before, from St. Catherine's, Laura Tracy from Killa, Aisling Thompson from Milford, Katrina Mackey from Douglas, and Amy O'Connor from St. Vincent's. Like, it's an incredible number, 8 All-Stars there. And just one final question before we move on. Is this the start of a Cork dynasty here? Because you look at the camogie landscape at the moment, Kilkenny are a massive transition at the moment. There's a few players like Grace Walsh and Miriam Walsh that have hung up the boots. Galway are still there and thereabouts, but they didn't produce much up until the All-Ireland final. Tip and Waterford are up and coming teams, but the they wouldn't be as traditional as the likes of Cork, Galway and Kilkenny. So is there an opportunity there for Cork to create a bit of history here in going maybe 3, 4, 5 in a row even?
Yeah, there is the potential in this group. Like we've seen them grow over the last couple of years. Like they had that heartbreak of losing those two finals in a row, but they put back-to-back O'Duffy Cups together now. So they have the confidence, the self-belief. And we saw this year just what winning the winning the first one took a big monkey off the back. All of a sudden that they knew that they were good enough to win it, and we saw them this year even kind of grow and develop even more. And it's a pretty young team. Okay, there's a couple of more in like if you're looking at the Mackeys, I think one of the Mackeys won or 8 All-Star the last day, but there's such a good young core of players there that you could see this Cork team go on to like win 3 in a row, which would be historic for Cork, kind of. And I think what's been a big thing over the last couple of years too, Matthew, is there was a big 3 in camogie. There probably still is. You've Cork, Galway, and Kilkenny, and in recent seasons, Cork were kind of third in that trio, like kind of Galway and Kilkenny were ahead of them. But they've totally reversed that order now. Like Cork are winning championship games against teams that used to regularly beat them. Like Galway were kind of the Cork's bogey team for a number of years, but Cork beat them in the last couple of years. Cork have beaten Kilkenny too in championship, and it's just I think it's really important for this Cork team to know that if they play well and go out there, that they can beat any team in the country. So that sets them up well for 2025. But on the other hand, they're not the hunter anymore. They're the hunted, as in every team now wants to knock Cork off their perch. So they're going to raise their performance levels when they're taking on Cork. So it's a big challenge. It's a really big challenge to win 3 in a row. There's a reason no Cork team has ever done it before, because it is that difficult. But there's a really good group of Cork players there at the moment. And like I said, there's a good age profile to them too. And this is a team that knows how to win big matches now. They have that big game experience. They have the taste of what it's like to win. And it's almost I don't know whether he was a 3 in a row as a motivation. With Saoirse on the podcast there a couple of weeks ago, and she's saying that she's not going to be talking about the 3 in a row, but it'll have to be in the back of their minds. And to achieve something that no Cork group has ever achieved before, like that will be a big driving factor in 2025. So it's going to take a hell of a team to stop Cork next year.
Definitely so, and hopefully Cork do win the 3 in a row next year and create a bit of history for themselves. There isn't much West Cork involvement in the last few weeks in terms of club championships. So Donovan Rossa and Kilmacabea will play in the next few weeks in their respective semi-finals. But the attention this weekend is on Goleen. They're in the Junior B County Championship semi-final against Ballinhassig this weekend in Innishannon at 2 p.m. on Sunday. Like Goleen have been absolutely magnificent this season. Across all competitions, they've only lost 1 game, and that was the West Cork League game to Randallogue 2-8 to 2-7. Like they've been absolutely incredible across the confined Junior B Championship, which happened at the start of the season, the Carberry Championship, the league. They're going for a quadruple of trophies and a double for county titles as well. So Ballinhassig will be tough, but like Goleen have proved time and time again, they are the real deal this season.
They are, and it's just a great story. Like it's one of the big kind of local GA stories of the year. Like you mentioned, your Donovan Rossa ladies can't stop winning the last couple of years. The Goleen footballers can't stop winning this year. And like to win that county confined Junior B Championship in the summer, that was a really big one for Goleen, because I mentioned there with the Cork camogie team after losing the 2 All-Ireland finals that they needed to get across the finish line. Goleen had lost 4 county Junior B finals in the last couple of years, so there was real pressure on them to finally land a county title, and they did during the summer. They did a super win. So all of a sudden for them is in like the belief that gave them, and it just again lifted the weight off their shoulders. And now all of a sudden, look at them, they've won the Carberry Junior B football title again, since now they're going for the kind of, this was the Open County Junior B title. So I know you were talking to Patrick Reedy for this Thursday Southern Star, Matthew, and he seemed pretty confident, didn't they? Like they're on a winning run at the moment, and to go into training in November, looking forward to training in November. It just seems like a really tight-knit unit, a really good camp there. So like even from your sense of talking to Patrick, I'd say they're just really looking forward to this game on Sunday now, are they?
Absolutely. And from what I got talking to Paddy, I suppose, is they're just bound to go into training sessions, and it's not really the case for every team in West Cork. And even going into the depths of winter when the nights are cold, when you're working long hours in the day, like it's still like they absolutely love going into training, and they don't want this winning run to stop. Like I asked about the trophies this season, does that give them more confidence in getting another Junior B title? And he was saying, we just want to keep winning, we just want to keep the farm boat going. And I think that probably just epitomises going into a T, that they just want to keep winning. And they had the decision at the end of last year and start of this season whether they wanted to go into the Junior A Championship in Carberry, but they decided to stick in Junior B because, as Pádraig said to me, they had unfinished business. They wanted to get a few things done in the Junior B Championship. So it definitely does epitomise what the club is all about, and probably the temperament in going for another title.
It is. It's just a great story. Like I was talking to Fionnuala O'Driscoll from the Skibbereen ladies for last week's Star, and she said a phrase today hear a lot around Skibbereen at the moment is that this team is helping to shorten the winter. You know, it has to be the same out in Goleen at the moment as well, because we're here now. What kind of mid-November, kind of creeping towards the end of November. December's just around the corner, and the Goleen footballers are still in action. The Skib ladies footballers are still in action. We've the Kilmacabea footballers out the weekend after next, and I think there's 5 of the 6 Carbery under 21 football champions are and hurling champions are in action over the next couple of weeks as well. So it's just great to have kind of GA, I suppose, at this time of the year, because what it's doing, it's shortening the winter, and like you said as well, winning helps. You know, like Goleen are just riding the crest of a wave at the moment. They don't want this to stop. They really don't want this to stop. So hopefully they'll get the job done against Ballinhassig on Sunday. We'll have another county final to look forward to.
And you mentioned the under-21 championships there. Just before we go to a break, like Beara beat Valley Rovers at the weekend in that competition. They're now in the County A under-21 final, where they'll play either Bishopstown, Ada or Ballinaur in the final. Like, for the division itself, they've been out of the Cork Premier Senior Championship College Divisional section for the last 2 seasons, the senior side. So for this underage crop of players to come through in a division that's probably just divided confidence a small bit in senior level over the last few seasons. It's magnificent, obviously. They beat a very good Valley Rovers team after extra time, won 9 points last weekend.
Yeah, huge win for Beara, and just the boost that Beara football needs. Like you said, Matthew, for the last 2 years they pulled out of the County Senior Championship, which is a shame, because Beara football, they've great pride in their football in Beara. The kind of it's a football bastion out west. So for the under-21s, they beat a good Bantry team in the quarter-final. They beat Valley Rovers after extra time the last day. Captain Fintan Finner led by example. It was very much a team effort there to get over the line. And they're now through to County Under-21 A final for the first time since 2006. Just a huge boost for the division, you know, kind of it's putting Beara football back in the headlines for the right reasons, you know, and I think that's so important. And what this shows too, and it highlights, there is talent in the division. And Andrew Fitzgerald, who has been their senior manager, is over this under 21 team as well, and he was telling you that as well this week, that it's a big boost. So I think it shows all the clubs in the division that there is talent there, and hopefully at some stage that will kind of start kind of permeating through to the senior side, and we'll see them back in the senior championship. But it's a good news story for Beara right now, and like I said, they have a county final to look forward to as well, which is hopefully a really, really good way to round off the year for them.
Absolutely, it's great to see so many West Cork teams still at the latter stage of the championship, and we're nearly in December. It's brilliant to see. But after the break, we'll talk more about rugby and the Jack Crowley debate.
The Star Sport podcast is brought to you by Access Credit Union. Access Credit Union, funding dreams for over 50 years.
So welcome back to the podcast, and in a while we'll be joined by Tom Savage from Three Red Kings to discuss the current situation with Jack Crowley, obviously maybe being under pressure for the number 10 jersey, but there is a lot to unpack in this, obviously, in the last few weeks, Kieran. Ireland had autumn internationals against New Zealand and Argentina in the last couple of weeks. By my calculations, Jack played 62 minutes against New Zealand and about 56 to 57 minutes against Argentina. And coincidentally, when Jack was off the pitch, Ireland didn't score any points across both games. So it probably just shows his influence on the team. But there are certain sections, I would say, of the media still thinking that Sam Prendergast is probably the new answer for the number 10 after Ciaran Frawley had a bit of a poor display in the first game against New Zealand. So it's a debate that's popped up in the last few weeks. What's your own thoughts on it?
Yeah, it's a very interesting debate. You know, I suppose first off that no one has kind of divine right to hold on to the jersey for X amount of time. Like we were blessed with Ronan O'Gara, then Johnny Sexton was like the dominant number 10 for Ireland for so long. So he's obviously exited stage left now, and the jersey was very much up for grabs after that. And what Jack Crowley did, he made that jersey his own, as in terms of he put his hand up, he took his chance, and he has been Ireland's number 10 for the most part since Sexton's departed. I think Jack played every minute of the Six Nations games earlier in the year when Ireland won the title. So he's shown himself to be the man in possession of the jersey. Of course, you're going to have pretenders to the throne, and we've had, like you said, Kieran Frawley and Sam Prendergast as well, like two really talented players. Kieran Frawley's older than Jack, who's only 24, while Sam Prendergast, I think he's only 21, so 21 maybe. So he's one of the young ones to watch in the years ahead. And Prendergast is a huge talent. He really is, like, and he's one to watch over the next couple of years. But it's just been really interesting to watch the narrative, I think, around these autumn internationals, where we've heard a lot about the ushering in of the Sam Prendergast era, and it almost it's like it's always been, I suppose disrespectful is probably too strong a word, but it's just kind of uncomfortable in terms of how it sits with what Jack Crowley's done over since he's had that jersey. Like, kind of he's a young fella still learning his trade, still developing, still maturing. And he's been he's been solid for it, and he's been even more than solid. He's been very good. So, but now all of a sudden it's like there's some people kind of saying, well, that's it now. Sam Prendergast is here, and he's going to take over, and that's not fair to Sam Prendergast either. He needs time to develop, to find his feet at that level. Like we're quite fortunate in Ireland that we have these good number 10s, kind of, and hopefully like we'll be kind of stocked in that position for the foreseeable future. But it's just the kind of, whether it's that instant world we live in now, kind of, Matthew, where kind of people want it now, kind of it's everything is instant. Like Sam Prendergast could be the flavour of the month, so we want him in. Kieran Frawley was flavour of the month after the tour in South Africa when he had those drop goals. But then he had a poor 20 minutes against New Zealand, and he was almost consigned in, kind of, it shouldn't be like that, there's room for the three lads to compete for the jersey, but just let them play their rugby, let them concentrate on their rugby, and let the best men wear the number 10 jersey. And right now, the best man for the number 10 jersey is Jack Crowley. He's proved that for Ireland and stuff. And of course, it's important for the likes of Prendergast and Frawley to get minutes as well. But it's just, like I said, it's just that narrative. Just, we shouldn't be writing off a fella after a poor half of rugby. It shouldn't be like that, So it's just been an interesting one to watch from afar. That's why we said we get the Jack Crowley fan club up and running this week to kind of to back our man, to kind of to say, like, just give him a break. Just he needs to. He's such huge potential, and there's more to come from Jack. So instead of people kind of castigating him for any little mistakes he made, just give him the confidence to go out and try what he's capable of doing, because, like I said, he's a player with huge potential.
Some interesting comments saw right on the Virgin Media panel as well. I watched it back yesterday or earlier this week. Shane Horgan was saying about Prendergast and Frawley and maybe Crowley in the conversation as well. This is a really exciting scenario that is playing out in front of us. Prendergast is immediately a live candidate. Like, is that putting too much pressure on Prendergast in a way? Because, like, Crowley, as he mentioned, he's provided big moments. That drop a goal against Leinster en route to Munster winning the ORC a few seasons back. Crowley has produced some brilliant moments, including a try against Argentina recently in the Autumn International. So, and in a way, is Prendergast put under too much pressure? Because he even heard Dave McIntyre in the Virgin Media commentary, like, every touch that Prendergast was kind of getting, it was almost applauded to a certain extent. So, like, is Sam Prendergast put under too much pressure in all this as well?
Yeah, there's a strong case for that to be said as well, Matthew. Like, he's a young fella, just kind of made his Ireland debut the last day. Just give him time to find his feet. Of course, he's hugely talented, like, huge potential there, and he easily could become the man to have the number 10 jersey kind of and make it his own. But we just have to be very careful that he's not just pushed in too fast. He still needs to develop. He needs to make himself number one in Leinster first. He needs time to develop, to get stronger, to get used to the pace of that game. There could be a situation where it goes into the Six Nations next year where Crowley and Prendergast are kind of the two main men put forward and stuff, and Crowley starts and Prendergast comes on to finish the game and get him up to that level of the game. But almost just kind of this instant kind of crowning of the Prendergast era. Like, it's almost, lads, calm down. Take a breath, kind of, we don't need to rush this. He's only a young fella. He's only 21 years of age. He's time on his side, kind of. It's just been, like you said there, it's just very, very interesting, the comments that are coming. But when you look at some of the panels, they're like looking at Virgin Media panel, it's all Leinster lads, kind of. So they're looking after their own. They're looking after their own patch in terms of, okay, we'd love to see Leinster number 10 there. We could be accused of Munster bias down this neck of the woods, that we want a Munster man and a West Cork man in the number 10 jersey. But the reality is that you want the best man in the jersey, and the best man in the jersey right now is Jack Crowley. He's proved it. He needs to be backed, and he needs to, I suppose, the confidence. He needs to know that he's been backed and have that confidence, and almost that to be allowed to show what he can do.
Just before we switch over to Tom, is there an argument that Crowley can be affected by Munster's performances so far this season? Because it's well documented they are struggling in the URC at the moment. Leinster are flying high, and they have the same group of players in and around, like at scrum half you have Jameson Gibson Park, and the centres you have Robbie Henshaw and Gary Ringrose. And is there an argument to say that if there's a Leinster out half, he'd be more comfortable in and around those players, or is that kind of a weak kind of an argument? And like, is Crowley affected, do you think, by his chances by Munster's performances so far this season, or am I just going too far there?
No, it's kind of an interesting one. Like Jack is very kind of calm, cool, composed kind of guy. Like I don't think too much phases him, but like he's obviously going to hear the kind of the outside noises as well. You just can't escape it. Like it's everywhere. You go on social media. You look in the newspapers. It's talking about Prendergast, Frawley, and stuff, and all this sort of stuff. So it's kind of like Munster's form probably doesn't help him either. Munster haven't been obviously have been going great. Kind of Graham Roundtree's has left now as well. Leinster have been dominant over the last couple of years, but you'd hope that it's the best man for the job. Kind of the best number 10 in Ireland right now is Jack Crowley. That can easily change. Kind of Frawley could catch fire with Leinster. Prendergast could come on and just blow everyone out of the water. Kind of by the talks of people who've seen him up close. He's huge potential. But like I said earlier, just give him time to develop and give him time to find his feet. You don't want to give a young fella too much too soon, and it just be kind of all of a sudden they're consigned to the dustbin. You'd hope Munster would find a bit of form quite soon, because that would help Jack and all the Munster guys and all the West Cork guys at Munster. It's been a tough slog at the moment for them, but there's no getting away that there's very much a kind of a Leinster-centric kind of element to the Ireland team at the moment, and the players outside Leinster are almost the exception to the rule in some cases. But I think it's very important for rugby all over Ireland that you have the likes of Jack Crowley showing that you can come from Innishannon and play for Bandon and become Ireland's number 10. I think it's just really good for the sport, outside of Leinster, to know that the likes of a Fineen, Witchleaf and Bantry can go to Munster and can play for Ireland, or Gavin Coombs from Skibbereen can go and play for Ireland and get a couple of caps. So long may that continue.
Absolutely. So, and let's hear from the rugby expert from Three Red Kings, Tom Savage now.
Joined now on the podcast by Tom Savage, well known as the man behind Three Red Kings. Tom, welcome back to the podcast. How's life been treating you? Are you enjoying the Autumn Internationals?
Well, I don't know if enjoying is the right word. I'm certainly watching them. Other than that, just generally quite tired. But other than that, absolutely fine. Yeah, no, it's been a weird 2 weeks watching this Irish team. It feels that there's quite a lot of problems going on with this squad and with this team at the moment that are, I'm not sure if they're being fully masked, but they're certainly there, and I think most people can see them. Win over a good Argentina team last Friday kind of felt like a loss the way the game finished. That's certainly something that's been a common enough theme from people I've spoken to this week. And it's kind of hard to put your finger on why exactly that is. I think I have a fair idea, but this was we talked about that.
Like you said, it's been an interesting couple of weeks. I suppose it started off with the loss to New Zealand, and Ireland can't have any qualms there. Like the better team won on the day. Ireland just didn't function as we've seen them over the last 18 months. And then against Argentina, a very good first half was followed by a below par second half, and Ireland were hanging on at the end. Argentina were pushing towards trying to get a try to get their first ever win in Ireland. But I suppose when I touched base with you earlier in the week, Tom, I kind of mentioned one name to you. I want to talk about Jack Crowley. Whether Jack Crowley's obviously he's a local guy here to us, kind of Innishannon, Bandon Rugby Club, Bandon Grammar. Like we kind of he's come up through the ranks here, and he's now Ireland's number 10. He's the man in possession of the jersey. It's been a weird couple of weeks, hasn't it? The whole, I suppose, narrative around Jack Crowley with the likes of Ciaran, Frawley and Sam Prendergast kind of competing for the jersey. I just want to get your take on, I suppose, what's happening at the moment, because Jack is the man in possession of the jersey. He played every minute of the Six Nations. Ireland won the Six Nations. All of a sudden, things seem to have changed, or things seem to have shifted a small bit, Tom, have they?
It is a weird thing. Like, I think a fact, first of all, right? 96.2% of all the points that Ireland have scored after Johnny Sexton's career is finished have been done while Jack Crowley has been on the field. They have scored 0 points while Jack Crowley has been off the field. There's a weird push, I think, at the moment to try to get either Kieran Frawley, so that was certainly the case after the second test in South Africa, in as the number one guy. And now, since Ciaran Frawley had that disastrous 20 minutes off the bench against New Zealand, that has now kind of slid over to Sam Prendergast, that he should be the one in possession of that jersey. And I will say this, Jack Crowley does not have a divine right to this jersey for X number of years going forward, just because he's had a good year with Ireland up until now. If it was a case that he was playing poorly, I think I'd be one of the first people to say so. I like to try and review these games objectively. But watching the last 2 games back in the last couple of weeks, and certainly with my work doing on the New Zealand and Argentina games, I don't know where this narrative is coming from. Like, Jack Crowley has been okay to good in the last 2 games. In a game against New Zealand where pretty much everybody was playing poorly, he did okay. Had 1 or 2 mistakes. I mean, like everybody else. And then you look at the Argentina game, where he was, again, more than decent. Scored a try. He scored all, like, as in Ireland stopped scoring points once he was off the field. And it's kind of hard to say. I mean, look, I think he's at that point at the moment now where there's a bit of a push to get the Leinster guy in as the 10. That's certainly the case at the moment. I think it's partly driven by the fact that people are looking at this Irish team and seeing something's wrong. They're seeing that it's not performing the way that it had over the last 2 or 3 years. And they're looking for something to go, well, why is this? And I think most people's default is it has to be the 10, right? Now, keep in mind that when we were going through at a national level a fairly difficult period from around 2020 until early 2022, there was a lot of criticism on Conor Murray. You might remember this. Now, Johnny Sexton was playing equally as poorly at the time, yet in that era, it was Conor Murray that was the problem, not Johnny Sexton. And now it's odd that it's not Jamison Gibson Park as this halfback combination. It must be Jack Crowley. I think that's just part of the way that the media works at the moment. There's a big push, and I think there is a sort of a general discomfort with I would say, the media bubble, which is quite Leinster focused. There is a bit of discomfort there with that 10 jersey not being a Leinster guy. And there's a little bit more freedom to try and tear down whoever's there. That was impossible when Johnny Sexton was in charge, and in charge is the right word there. But yeah, it is a bit of a weird situation at the moment where a young player who's, won a Six Nations for Ireland in the 10 jersey in the last year, like, this wasn't ancient history. This was a couple of months ago. Is at a point now where it's almost like he has to justify his continued selection, and that, one kick out on the full against Argentina is enough of a reason for people to go, well, he needs to get out of here. It's Sam Prendergast's era now, which is just a kind of ridiculous hype. And like I say hype, there's no harm in thinking young players can be good players. But it's just one of these things where when I see the way that they're talking about Sam Prendergast, even in the commentary on Virgin Media on Friday, this guy just made a little pump fake on a pass and then passed to James Lowe. The pass then got knocked on. But the guys in the commentary were talking about it like that it was something that you'd never seen before in your life, like it was Jonah Lomu running over my cat. It's very, very... It's just a really weird situation at the moment where it feels that you can kind of just say anything you want about Jack Crowley at the moment and people will believe it. 96.2% of all the points scored since Johnny Sexton retired have been scored while Jack Crowley has been in the field. 6 points in total. That's been scored while he's off it.
That's an incredible stat, Tom. And like we said, like, Jack's only 24 years of age. Like, he's only after, like, he's a season or so as Ireland's number 10. He needs time to grow and develop. He needs an arm around his shoulder. He needs to be encouraged and, to kind of because there's more to come from. Like you've seen him more than most with Munster. Like there is a huge potential with Jack Crowley, but instead of almost that support, like you said there, it's like people are just waiting to knock him down. Kind of. Sam Prendergast is a really talented young fella. He's 21 years of age. Kind of. This Sam Prendergast era, he has time in his side. So is Jack. I think Ciaran Frawley's 26, is it?
He's 26, 27. Yeah, he's heading into that territory. Yeah.
So they're young. Like so. I just can't understand the rush by some to kind of usher Sam Prendergast in. He's 21 years of age. Kind of Jack Crowley's done more than enough to hold on to this jersey for the time being. Like he's proved himself. And I just feel like it's just, I'm just not very comfortable. Like I said earlier, with the narrative that's coming. Even before the game against Argentina the last day, some of the articles about the Sam Prendergast era. It's like, okay, it just feels a small bit disrespectful to the man who's wearing the jersey right now.
Oh, it is. And I think that, I think Sam Prendergast will know this as well. The same people who are calling it the Sam Prendergast era today, it was the Kieran Frawley era 3 weeks ago. It was the Ross Byrne era a year before that. It was the Harry Byrne era before that, and then it was a Ross Byrne era before that. These guys, they change horses very, very quickly. Sam Prendergast will know this. If he has two bad games in a row, if he ends up having a bad game and Leinster lose, for example, and that's assuming he's selected in the next couple of weeks, they'll move on to the next guy very, very quickly. And I think that you look at Kieran Frawley is a perfect example of this. After his 2 drop goals against South Africa, there were cartwheels in the street. This guy needs to be the new 10, needs to be Leinster's starter. All these questions supposedly he's opened up. He's had a bad game, objectively, off the bench against New Zealand. Not the first Irish player, nor the last player to have a bad game against New Zealand, I will suggest. And all of a sudden, I saw an article, or saw a segment on a radio station where they literally said, and this is a quote, "Has Kieran Frawley been consigned to the dustbin of history?" This was after a bad 20 minutes against New Zealand. It's at the point where everybody tries to keep changing horses, and they treat, we didn't hype Kieran Frawley enough, so now we've got to go do a real big job with Sam Prendergast and see if we can almost talk him into being more ready than what he actually was. But this is not the first time either. Brian O'Driscoll, back in 2022, I think it was, or 2021, after Billy Burns kicked that penalty out on the full at the end of the game against Wales, sent out a tweet saying, speed dial Harry Byrne to come in. Now, Harry Byrne at this stage had just made, I think he'd made 6 or 7 games for Leinster and had just played against a heavily rotated Scarlets team in the RDS in front of 0 people. And he's being touted by Brian O'Driscoll to come in and start for Ireland. It's a very weird ecosystem at the moment. And I think what we're seeing is that that kind of weird hype. It's not okay for a guy to be a good young player. He has to be world class. And it's not okay for a fella to have a bad game. He's consigned to the dustbin of history. It's a very, very weird place at the moment. And I will reiterate again. I think Jack Crowley is, on this year, he's the number 1 guy for that Irish jersey at the moment. I don't think he'll start at the weekend against Fiji. I think that's a game where they're going to rotate anyway. I think that was always going to be the plan. But if you're Joe Schmidt, who would you want to see at 10 for Ireland in that game against Australia coming up in 2 weeks' time? Would you rather see Jack Crowley, a really complete defender at 10, a fella who's shown that he can, produce big moments and drive a team to score points while he's on the field, or a young fella who's 21 years of age, whose tackle technique does not look like it's anywhere near where it needs to be. He's looking a little bit stiff with his movements, doesn't really carry the ball, a good passer, a good kicker. He's there for a reason. But who would you prefer to see? If I'm Joe Schmidt, I'm thinking, if I want Australia to win, they need to start Sam Prendergast. People want this until they get it, I feel. Sam Prendergast is a good young player. I'd like to see him getting, first of all, nailed down a starting position for Leinster. And then we can start talking about him as a competitor for Jack Crowley. But I think this also comes back on the door of Andy Farrell. His policies, his selection, the environment that he's creating, all is not well there at the moment, I feel.
When you look at, like I said earlier, Tom, we have Jack Crowley, Sam Prendergast, Kieran Frawley, 3 very talented number 10s, like we're well stocked in that position. Instead of almost biting them off against one another, like that's the next 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years. You would think like someone's going to come out of the pack, of course, over the next couple of years. But we're well stocked there. Kind of, what do you think the let's say the where they're numbered now? Who's 1, 2, and 3? You know, kind of Jack has to be number one to say, given what he's achieved.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. If I'm like just looking at who's produced for Ireland in the last year. Jack Crowley has been back to start all of these big games, and starting a game is very different to coming off the bench in a game because the defenses are fresher, there's less space, the hits are harder, there's more pressure when you're coming off the bench. And this has been the case for Kieran Frawley, certainly against South Africa in the second test in particular. You know exactly what has to be done. When you're starting a game at 10 from the very start at test level, it's an open book. Like anything can happen, and you've got to try and control what happens as it's happening. When you're coming off the bench, the template has been set to a certain extent. You know that there's certain patterns that you've seen because you're looking at all this on the bench. So you can come on and look to try and exploit those. And plus you're coming on against a more tired defense. You know, there's going to be a little bit more space coming off the bench because if you're coming off the bench at 60 minutes, you're going to be coming on with other forwards more than likely. And that was the case certainly at the weekend against Argentina. All of a sudden, Ireland looked like they're going forward, getting a little bit of momentum. But people forget that there's, you know, a bunch of other substitutes have come on as well at that point. So you're going to be a little bit fresher. You're going to get a little burst of energy at that point. I think Jack Crowley has shown that he's the guy that they'll start for big games. He has to keep performing, of course, like as in needs more games like he had against Argentina. That's always the case in any position. Nobody has a divine right to a jersey. I think after that, then it comes back to what you want on your bench. If Ireland want to run a 6-2 split in the bench, I think Ciaran Frawley is the guy they'll go with because he covers 10, 12, fullback, could arguably cover outside centre as well. And then I think Sam Prendergast, if they want to go and build more minutes into him, which I do think is very important. He should be I think he'll be number 2 depending on what they want. But again, I think we saw with Johnny Sexton over the years where there was no chance really for any of his, we'll say understudies or whatever you want to call them. They never really had a chance to build any meaningful experience. And Ireland were worse off for it. So it's not a case that Jack Crowley should play every minute of every game or start every single game. There's absolutely scope there for Sam Prendergast to start a few games in the Six Nations. If they think he's that guy. Start him away to Wales. Start him away to Scotland. See how he does. Jack Crowley on the bench then, for example. Or you start Jack at home against France, maybe at home against England first up, we'll say. And have Prendergast off the bench. There's no reason why it has to be just a one guy all the time. But I do think at the moment that Jack Crowley has earned, we'll say, the lion's share of those minutes as both a starter and as a focal point for the team. But a few things have changed over the last year. Like you go back to the Six Nations, Jack Crowley was averaging around 42 involvements, or actually no, I think it's higher. I think it's 48 involvements per game. So he's either passing, carrying, or kicking, right? 48 involvements. In the last 2 games against New Zealand and Argentina, that has dropped to the mid-20s. And you wonder, why is that? He's still running the same lines. He's still in the same positions. It's just he's getting the ball less often. I think there's been a change in Ireland's attacking structure as well, maybe mostly to do with Mac Hansen coming in, because Mac Hansen was injured for the last year. He comes back in. He's a kind of an alternate playmaker for this Irish team. So all of a sudden, Jack's involvements are diluted. And I think, is that framing some of the questions that are around him as well? Is this, because again, this is Andy Farrell's attack. He's the attack coach. So you have to look at, well, what is Andy Farrell putting Crowley in the best position to succeed? Why is he changed from what worked back in the Six Nations when Ireland won the Six Nations? That's going to be something I think that will become more apparent, because if you watch these last 2 games, you'll be thinking, geez, that the ball's bypassing Jack a fair bit. And it has. Mm-hmm. That's something I think is going to be a bit of an X factor going forward. Just how much of what we're seeing comes down to Andy Farrell rather than the halfbacks themselves. Because I think that, like, Ireland's squad is looking a little bit old, looking a little bit tired. And again, I think that they've borrowed wins from the future to a certain extent over the last year or 2 years. Ireland have capped 13 players. Well, it's up to 15 now in the last 2 years. And you might think, well, what's the average The average is over 20 for every other team in the league, or in the top 10, we'll say. So why is that as well? That's another weird thing. This is why I'm saying that that all does not seem to be well. There seems to be a bit of added tension and pressure that's with this Irish team at the moment. Andy Farrell coaching like a fella that the wolf is at the door. You wouldn't think that he was, in a very safe position with this Irish team, because he's, again, selecting the same guys over and over and over and over again. And that to me is the big factor here, that it's Ireland's system that is at the moment struggling, and people are looking to try and, find a reason for that feeling of unease they have watching this Irish team, and they go, it must be the 10. For me, it's much, much bigger than that, and it's far more wide-ranging. And I think we're at the moment where we're at the cusp of a fairly big transition with this Irish team, where if they don't get it right, and this is the big risk, that things will get very unpredictable. And 10, which I think is actually probably the most settled depth chart of all the positions in the team at the moment, that's the least of our problems going forward, I would say. There's lots to run in this yet. I think Ireland are going through, looking at a pretty bumpy period coming up, I feel.
So does that transition need to happen sooner rather than later? Thinking of the World Cup cycle, kind of, we're looking at the next World Cup. Do we need to, the likes of, like you said, you made a great point earlier, Tom, about kind of with Sam Prendergast, whether it's Sam Prendergast and Jack Crowley kind of rotating throughout the Six Nations. But does that need to happen more in terms of, there's some fellas there right now who won't be there for the next World Cup, kind of with the great respect to Ciaran Healy. What an incredible record to get the last day, but you would think is not going to be at the next World Cup. There's other fellas, for the time catches up on us all. So does that need to happen faster, or what do you think needs to happen over the next, I suppose you're talking the next Six Nations, the next 12 months?
Well, I think ideally it would have been happening in increments over the last 24 months as of now, but it feels that, and look, this is all completely fair, right? That Ireland were looking at the Tour of New Zealand in 2022, and we want to win that, right? And then you've got your November series coming up. Then a few fellas got capped in, but then you're talking about, we want to try and win those as well, build momentum. You always want to win at home. World Cup's coming up. You want to send a message. Then the next Six Nations comes along, and you're thinking, are we going to bring in a bunch of new guys now? No, we're going to settle with who we have, and we're going to build towards the World Cup. They didn't cap a whole bunch of new guys coming into the World Cup, albeit they did include Jack Crowley, although he came in as the kind of third behind Ross Byrne and eventually, overtook him. But then you had Joe McCarthy being involved a little bit more. This last year, then after the World Cup, that would have been the perfect time to start bringing in a lot of guys from outside. But I think you've seen this with the announcements. It's harder to get off this team than it is to get into it. And it's hard to get into. It's hard to get a call up to training, to the wider training group. So, Andy Farrell has you can't have it both ways. He has gone for a very tight, small group where the cohesion and the way that they play, the way that they train, everything is, they're all deeply, what would be the word? They're soaked in this cohesion and this team and this game plan. It goes very, very deep. But as a result, you don't really have any depth. He was complaining about not having depth the week before last, and that he doesn't have thousands of players. No, you don't. But there's certainly more players who I think are capable of playing international rugby than have done in the last 2 years. Like I said, if New Zealand can cap 26 players in the last 2 seasons, why are Ireland capping only 13 up until last Friday? This is kind of where we're at. It feels that all the opportunities that we had to start developing new guys from outside the very tight group they had, all those opportunities have been passed up over the last few windows of opportunity. And I wrote in the Wally Ratings this week, my review on my site, that the longer you spend on the wrong train, the more expensive it is to get home. And that's something I'm looking at this Irish team, where we kept giving up these opportunities to bring in a bunch of guys who are under the age of we'll say 24. You want a group of people who are under 26, we'll say, who have 10 plus caps around now, who are pushing up on the guys who are 26 to 30, and then they're pushing up on the guys who are 30 plus. But there's a big gap there at the moment, where you have the likes of Ronan Kelleher, we'll say, and Dan Sheehan and Caelan Doris, who are the last of those, the youngest group of senior players. They're around 26, 27. Then you have a big gap. You have Jack Crowley, who's there, who's 24. You have Joe McCarthy, who's 23. You have Jamie Osborne, who's there as well, there at 22. But that's only 3 guys. Ideally, you'd have 6 or 7 fellas who are pushing up at that level, because there's big gaps developing at loosehead. There's a gap developing at tight head. You've got with the second rows and the back rows, like Peter O'Mahony is 34, 35. Tyke Byrne is 33. You've got Conor Murray is 35 as well. You've got Jameson Gibson Park is 33. James Lowe is 32. All of a sudden, you're looking around this team, you're going, geez, they seem to have gotten old really quickly. Like all of us, I suppose. You look around and all of a sudden you're in your mid-30s and wondering what's going on. So it is a weird one. I do feel that there's certainly, I suppose, there's certainly excuses, I suppose, why this hasn't happened up until now. And by excuses, I mean all completely understandable, by the way. But it's made the next window coming up all the more difficult, because Easterby, the coach who's going to be looking after the Six Nations for Ireland while Andy Farrell is doing the Lions, he's got a tough job now, because he kind of has to, for his own CV, can't be seen to be losing games. This Irish team feels that if you bring in new guys and new players, you lose games. And that's kind of that's been the thing. So it's difficult to even get into training, but something has to change. They can't just keep relying on the same guys over and over again as they have been. So yeah, there's a crunch coming somewhere. Something's going to have to give. Either you give up a little bit of your cohesion, which Ireland have been using to win games for the last 3 years, and try new guys, because the Emerging Ireland tours, they don't work. Andy Farrell admitted as such there a week ago, where he said he just doesn't have the depth. These Emerging Ireland tours were there to supposedly encourage depth. He admitted to everybody that that's not true. So something has to give, and we'll see what exactly that is, I think, in this upcoming Six Nations.
Final question. So, Tom, and to borrow on your train analogy a couple of minutes ago, and bringing it back to West Cork for a second, has the train left the station for the likes of Gavin Coombs, John Hodnett, Fionn Wycherlys, who have over the last couple of seasons played really, really well for Munster, got a sniff of the Irish setup, Gavin more so, but the door's firmly shut. Like, have they any chance of forcing their way in over the next couple of years, or what do you think is the let's say international future for the guys like that?
Well, it depends, because like Andy Farrell has shown that his system is fairly rigid. He likes to have guys of a certain role that do certain things. Gavin Coombs is a different type of number 8 than what Caelan Doris is. Does different things, is better at different things. I think if Ireland decided they want to change how they play, and looking at the last 2 weeks, it feels that certain elements of Ireland's game have been worked out by the opposition, then that could bring back in guys like Gavin Coombs, who I feel should be involved in the squad regardless, just as an option. I feel he would be involved in any other test team in the world. But the way that Andy Farrell runs his camp, it's very, again, it's almost like a closed shop. That's how it's been described to me multiple times, that it is something of a closed shop. So I think for those guys, I think for the likes of Fineen, maybe the door is closed on him. But again, that doesn't mean you can't have a good career as a good player for Munster, I think he certainly has been. You look at John Hodnett. I think he was there or thereabouts in the last year or so. Needs to keep pushing, perhaps. But again, it comes down to what the coach wants, the head coach wants. And Andy Farrell wants certain guys who do certain things that are very like an incumbent. So it would suit John Hodnett if he was quite like Josh van der Fleer, because then that would increase his chances of getting in, I feel. If Gavin Coombs could do a passable Caelan Doris impression, then I think he'd probably be in the squad. But then you're moving away from what you're good at. Like Caelan Doris, for example, in the last 2 weeks, we've seen doesn't really suit carrying the ball in tight areas. He loses those collisions and plays very quietly as a result. I think that's a fair thing to say. Gavin Coombs, on the other hand, that's exactly where he's good. That's exactly where he thrives. So if it's a case that Ireland want to try and move to a system that isn't as involved, that allows players a little bit more freedom, I suppose, then I think maybe Gavin Coombs could be right back in there. But he's in a contract year for Munster as well. He has to look at this and go, is test rugby something that I'm really looking for now? If a big team in France comes calling, as I'm sure they will, does he go, do I take that up? Because test rugby, I don't seem to be involved there. That's what would happen with an All Black, somebody who was a capped All Black but not in the plans of the team. They'd be looking abroad. Maybe he will too. But I do think as well that he's a fellow who has a love for Munster and has played very well for Munster and enjoys playing for Munster. But I do think that for the moment, at least anyway, unless something changes with Easterby, that Test rugby looks to be off the table for the time being. But who knows? Lot can change in this game very quickly.
Good stuff, Tom. Appreciate that. Thanks for joining us.
No bother at all. Thank you.
The Star Sport podcast is brought to you by Access Credit Union. Access Credit Union, funding dreams for over 50 years.
So it is that time of the week again, Kieran, where we look at Thursday's Southern Star and what's in store for our readers this week.
Yeah, it's a packed Star as usual, Matthew. So the West Cork ladies held their awards night last Saturday night. So Nulla Cleary was inducted into the West Cork LGFA Hall of Fame, a very deserving award winner there. So I had a chat with Nullig, and we can officially call her a living legend now. Not that she's too happy with that. She's a very modest and humble woman. But we also have a 2-page special of pictures from the awards. So there was all player of the match awards from under 13 up to junior handed out. So we've all pictures of the award winners there. Like we touched on, the Bear under 21s getting to the county final, match report and reaction from that. Argentina Rangers won the Carbery Junior C hurling final. So we have full page on that. They beat Donny. So I always enjoyed the Junior C, Junior D competitions in Carbery because you've such a mixture, Matthew. You've the old guys who and the young guys. It's like this perfect mix of youth and experience. And Argentina got it right the last day, winning the Junior C title. Also, we have a preview of Goleen in action in the county Junior B football semi-final this weekend. St. Columns won a county under 16 title the weekend. Macroom footballers won a county minor football title for the first time in 20 years. We have an interview with Anne O'Grady from Bantry Blues, she's the new Cork ladies senior football selector. We're packed up with soccer action as well. The 2.5, nearly 3 pages of soccer there, including the Clonakilty under-18s are in FAI Youth Cup action at home on Sunday. And I know you were talking to them, Matthew. Gabriel Rangers have a big day coming up on December 1st. They're officially opening their new dressing rooms, and Nola Leary, the former Cork footballer, is doing that, and they're officially going to launch their new history book as well that Eugene McCarthy has been very much involved in. So we have a full page on what's coming up in Gabriel Rangers in Thursday's Southern Star, and just having a quick look as well. And we've the match reports from the Ahabullogue and Kilbrittain County Junior B hurling semi-final that was on last weekend. It's kind of a strange one. We were the only media there to cover the game, and it's one of those odd reports where the official scoreline doesn't match when you add up the scores. So it's kind of I think it's one for Star readers to check out on Thursday. Definitely caused a bit of drama and confusion after Kilbrittain have won the game and they've advanced to the county final, but Ahabullogue were not too happy with the scorekeeping. So that's worth checking out. So yeah, loads to tuck into.
Absolutely. So, and as usual, if you are further afield or can't make it to the shops, you could subscribe to the Southern Star e-paper and get the Southern Star on your laptop, tablet or phone. Just go to www.southernstar.ie/subscribe, enter your details and you'll get an exact replica of the newspaper for less than €2 per week. As always, thanks for listening to the Star Sport podcast, and thanks again to our sponsors at Access Credit Union. If you've enjoyed this, please remember to rate, review and subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts, and we'll be back again next week. Until then, take care.